Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ondrej Filip, and I'm usually here in a T-shirt of NIX.CZ, the exchange point in Prague and Bratislava. But this time I'm speaking on behalf of CZ, which is a company that does a lot of great software and hardware stuff, and this is one of them. And I think you might be a little bit familiar with BERT because you're using in your exchange. So I have just brief update what's going to happen in the near future, and what you can expect from BERT, how this will affect you as well, probably. So you might know we have two versions of BERT. We have version 1, currently 1.6.8, I guess, and then we have version 2. Version 1 has been here for a while, probably more than 10 years, even longer, I think. And it is a very stable branch, used by most of IXPs, actually most, the majority of IXPs in the world these days. And it works. It works for you as root server perfectly, although it has some small issues, something which you might consider to go to another version. One thing is IPv4, IPv6 separation, so you cannot basically use IPv6 routes in, for example, over IPv4 BGP session, which is not a concern of many networks usually. But more importantly, this version lacks parts of the RPK protocol called RTR. That means you cannot speak directly to a RPK validator. So basically, you can find some side way how to fill airways, tables that are used for RPK validation, but it's not automatical. You need to build some your own system, which is not very practical, actually. So if you use this version in your network or in your exchange point, it's perfect, works, it's stable, will be supported for a long time. But if you want to do RPK validation, I really recommend you to upgrade to a new version. And you will see there is not just this, which will be probably very good for you. So version 2 has been also a while, I think 2 years on fly. The current version, it's 2.07. We released a month ago, and we have no complaints. It works in some exchanges, so works very well. As I said, this version is slowly being adopted by exchange points because this has the RPK support, and it seems to be something that exchange points are working on. This version, or all the version 2 has IPv4 and IPv6 integration, so you can have both address families in that. But it's not necessary. You can also still run the separate if you wish. It has several advantages which are not something super important for exchange point. It has microsecond timers. The version 1 has just timers, which the lowest measure was just 1 second. It supports BGP flow spec, which might be interesting, and it supports MPLS and VPN support. So that's basically the new version as it started. It's meant to be stable, but it's just a software, so every software has a bug, and if you fix one bug, you will introduce another one. So it's not easy to say that something is perfect, but it's close to be perfect. At least some exchanges run it, and it seems to be smooth. I would like to talk about some recent features, and then might be important for exchange points. First of all, how root server, for example, is set up is that you have a long configuration, taken from internal databases, some other IRR databases, and you create BGP sessions, like configuration of BGP session, then list of filters, list of AS numbers, and so on. So usually pretty long configuration, and then you reload it every hour, some period. So what is important to download this configuration as quickly as possible, which is not so bad in BERT, but we want it to be better. So we did some new filter interpreter, especially some exchange points have really heavy filters with a lot of conditions and a lot of items. So we worked on the filter interpreter. We have a new one which compiles very quickly. It does some pre-interpretation in configuration time, and then it's compiled into bytecode, which is run later on. And we did it not just for the speed, but also for one thing which is important for the future, and that's to be thread safe, which I will talk a bit later. And it's a pretty modern design. I think I will mention several times, but Bear in mind that BERT started in 1998, so everything, especially filters, was created that time. The design of filters was created that time, so we can have a little bit more fresh view of those things now. And more importantly, it's much faster than in version 1. So again, this helps exchange points that reloads configuration quite often. We have another really fancy feature, which I'm not sure you can use, especially in exchange points, because there you need some security. But especially if you run some lightweight service where you just want to connect to as many people on the peering platform or VLAN as possible, this is very handy, like, for example, for AS112 or services like that. And it's called dynamic BGP clients. Basically, you just configure that you are happy to speak to any client on the LAN that connects you to, and you just define the neighbor of IP addresses that can connect to you. And when somebody connects to that BGP, it spawns a protocol instance and creates a new connection, accepts the remote AS number, and basically you are connected. So that's completely configureless configuration if you want to just connect to everybody and start to send routes. As I said, it's not perfect from the security point of view, and I don't think you can use it for root service, especially at LINX, but it's something you might consider if you have some very lightweight service. Another thing, this was already implemented, and now I'm moving a little bit to the future. With RPKI, we came on one more problem, and it just triggered today in the mailing list of BERT. Somebody wrote a letter saying, when I start BERT, it doesn't check airways or RPKIs. If I reload it, it starts. And the problem is this. When we start BERT and we start BGP session, it does the import filters of routes, and if the RPKI service is not started yet, then it has no way how to say that some route is invalid or valid. So that's why it imports everything. Then we fill RPKI table, and then we do not recheck. So that's the problem. Also, if it's a daemon which is running for a long time and some new route comes and then it's invalidated, we do not invalidate it. So there must be some manual process to re-evaluate all the routes in, and that's not perfect. So we are just working on the new version that will have this. So whenever some RPK update comes, we will re-evaluate all the import filters and either accept or remove some routes that were either validated or invalidated during that period. It adds a little bit more memory, but it's constant, so the complexity is the same, so no big deal, and it's a little bit slower, but honestly, this check is not the slowest thing when you are running root server, so shouldn't be okay for everybody. Should be. And then we have kind of the ultimate goal we have been working for a long time, and now we are closely getting to that. And that's called the multi-threaded version of BERT. Many people requested, and we said that this is not possible, but they were keeping insisting that we should do it, so now we start to work on that, and we have some results of it. First of all, and I said it even before, it was designed in 1998. Guys, I don't know who of you had a multi-core computer at that time, but probably not much. They were started at that time, by the way. There were some alphas with multiple core, but not much of it. So when we started the development, of course we said that it's going to be thread safe, that it could be run on multi-core machines, but the output is not so perfect. So there is a lot of single-threaded assumption, although we believe that there are none. And there's a lot of problems with message passing and ownership of some objects inside. So a lot of troubles we need to work on now. So we started, we have some version. We started with filters because when we checked some of configurations of some exchange points, we found out that 90% of time is spent on import filters, which is logical. They are securing the stuff that is imported into routing table, and they are doing a lot of decisions which are just then triggered by export filters later. So that's very logical. So we start to work on import filters, and the code is thread safe now, almost. let's say, we believe it's that safe, so we haven't done any like rigorous tests, but it seems to be okay. And we have some prototype. The only problem, we cannot support kernel protocol, which means that you cannot synchronize between the routing table of the daemon and routing table of the operating system, which might be a problem for somebody who is running BERT as in router, but for root server, that's no problem because those are not synchronized anyway. So we are in this stage. It is stable, but the small problem is that it is slower than the single-threaded version. We know that we are spending a lot of time in locking objects and stuff like that. So now we are working on optimization, and it's the future is bright. We know how to do it. We just wanted to have some stable version on which we can build, and the speed was not very important for us. But we have some version, and we are slowly moving. So. Once we will finish the optimization, we will work also on asynchronous configuration parsing. That means that if you reload the configuration, it will be passed, in a separate thread, and then just switch to a new one. So very quickly. So that will be a new thing. And last will be export filters. But actually, export filters shouldn't be used anyway much because. If you have a root server that has thousands of connections and single root came in, then you have a single import operation, but the number of export operation is 1,000 times, right? So you should be very careful what you are doing in export filters, and export filters should be as short as possible anyway. So all my fellow developers swore that this version will be in Q1 next year, so I put there Q3, and hopefully. Maybe, Christmas gives us something. We will see, but it's just a development, and we are just people. But kind of next year, I hope we can see that version, and maybe you will also benefit from this next year. So let's hope for that. And last but not least, broad development is supported by several companies, several exchange points, and LINX is one of them. So I would like publicly thank you very much, LINX, and especially John, for supporting our work. Thank you very much. And now I think it's a time for questions. There's one.
If only all software developers were so honest and self-deprecating and modest in their presentations, it would be a better world, wouldn't it?
Any other comments or questions?
Okay, thank you very much.